Level 1, the fortress of your birth. You were born in a secured government medical facility in Moscow, arriving months earlier than expected. Like life itself couldn't wait to throw you into the deep end. Before you even took your first breath, the entire floor had already been locked down by the Federal Protective Service. No cap, the whole wing. Armed officers stood at every entrance. Hallways were cleared out like the place had been wiped. Access was restricted to a handful of vetted personnel, a tight-knit crew that had been background checked so hard it probably felt like a full-on interrogation. No one raised their voice. No one asked unnecessary questions. Nobody was out here acting sus or trying to make a scene. You hadn't even cried yet, and the building was already operating under state-level security protocols. That's wild when you really sit with it. The medical staff assigned to the room weren't random. They had been pre-screened, monitored, and quietly briefed. Not threatened, not bribed, just made aware that discretion wasn't optional. You either stayed low-key or you were out, period. When you were born, nothing dramatic happened. No applause, no party in the hallway, no one popping off. Just a quiet confirmation through secure channels. The child was alive. No fanfare, no trending hashtag, just a cold, clinical update moving through encrypted lines like it was just another item on the daily agenda. Within hours, a small inner circle knew. Within days, speculation began to leak through controlled media channels, dripping out just enough to let the public feel like they were in on something without actually giving them a single thing real. Your existence wasn't announced. It was managed. There's a difference, and that difference is everything. You didn't choose this life. But from the first moment, your life was already classified, already on some list you'd never get to read, already being handled by people who answered to your father before they answered to anyone else. That was day one. Level 2, the architecture of isolation. Your childhood unfolds inside a heavily guarded residence outside the capital, one of several state-secured properties that come with the territory when your last name carries the kind of weight that bends rooms. From the outside, it looks like a private estate, old money aesthetic, trees, iron gates, manicured everything. Inside, it functions more like a controlled zone, a compound with a glossy finish. But don't get it twisted. Movement is logged. Visitors are cleared in advance. Perimeter security is layered and constant. Every single person on that property is accounted for 24/7. No exceptions, no chill. The property is vast, multiple buildings, private recreational facilities, controlled gardens. But none of that changes the core reality. You are not free to leave without coordination. No, for real. Not like your parents want to know where you're going, free. We're talking full-on logistical operation just to step outside. That's your version of a casual Tuesday. You don't attend a public school, not even a high-end one. Even elite private institutions, the kind where other kids from big-deal families go, are considered too unpredictable. Too many moving parts, too many people who might get nosy, or worse, get connected. Instead, your education is handled by a rotation of carefully selected tutors, individuals approved through state channels and bound by strict confidentiality. Basically, they signed up knowing that what happens in the compound stays in the compound. No tea spilled, ever. They are well compensated. They are also closely observed. You best believe there are eyes on every single one of them. You grow up surrounded by people, but not by equals. The children you interact with are either family or from similarly protected circles. Everyone in your orbit has been vetted, cleared, and quietly reminded of what's expected. Conversations are filtered, behavior is careful. Nobody's out here being extra or running their mouth. No one says it out loud, but everyone understands the hierarchy. You don't have to say it. You just feel it in the way people look at you, the way they pause before they speak, the way they never, ever forget who your father is. By the age of 6, you are assigned a communications identifier used by your security detail. It sounds harmless, almost like a nickname, something you'd get at summer camp or from an older cousin clowning around, but it isn't. It's used in radio transmissions, movement logs, and contingency planning. That's not a nickname, that's a designation. And designations don't come without conditions. That's when it becomes clear you are not just being protected. You are being managed as an asset, full stop. Level 3, power and paranoia. As you grow older, you begin to understand understand your father's position, not just as a leader, but as a man operating under constant pressure, the kind of pressure that doesn't clock out, ever. Power at that level is never stable. Don't let the polished suits and motorcades fool you. This isn't a situation where someone can just vibe in comfort and coast. Every day is a calculated move on a board nobody publicly admits exists. Meetings are controlled, information is filtered, trust is limited, and we're talking limited in a way that most people would find deeply unsettling. Like, the man probably doesn't even trust the air in the wrong room. Food security protocols exist, residences are rotated, travel routes are rarely repeated, not because it looks impressive, but because unpredictability is a layer of defense. Routine is a vulnerability, and your father doesn't do vulnerable. You start to notice patterns, things that would fly right over the head of any regular kid, but not you. You've been paying attention since before you knew you were paying attention. Conversations that stop when you enter, names that are never mentioned twice, people who disappear from the environment without explanation. No goodbye, no they moved, just gone. No cap, it's eerie. But nobody around you acts like it's weird, so you learn not to either. History becomes part of your education. You learn about figures like Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler, not as distant textbook villains that some teacher breezes past, but as full-on case studies. Power, control, collapse, the whole arc, what worked, what didn't, and more importantly, why they eventually lost the grip. The lesson is never stated directly. Nobody sits you down and says the quiet part loud, but it's always there, humming underneath everything. Power protects you until it doesn't. And when it stops protecting you, it can turn on you faster than anyone you ever trusted. That's the part they want you to never forget. Level 4, the burden of the name. Your first real mistake happens when you're still young enough that you don't fully clock what you're doing. You repeat something casually, something you heard at home, between adults, probably over dinner or in a hallway. It didn't seem like a big deal. You weren't out here trying to be messy. It just slipped out the way things do when you're a kid who doesn't yet know that your words work differently than everyone else's. But here's the thing. Information travels differently when it comes from you. Within hours, it reaches people it was never meant for, the wrong ears. The kind of ears that don't just hear things, they use things. That's when the rules change. No warning, no long lecture, just a quiet, firm adjustment to your entire existence. From that point forward, you don't speak freely, you don't repeat conversations, you don't assume anything is private. You learn fast that loose lips in your world don't just sink ships, they set off chain reactions you might not even live to fully understand. By your early teens, you are already appearing in controlled public settings, formal events, carefully staged environments where everything from the lighting to the guest list has been cleared. You are taught how to stand, straight, composed, purposeful, how to speak, measured, neutral, never reactive, how to remain still in your face, even when your thoughts are going a mile a minute. Not because you want to, but because every appearance carries weight. Every photo, every clip, every second you're visible is a message being sent on behalf of something much bigger than you. At some point, you stop being treated like a child and start being treated like a symbol. That transition is quiet. Nobody throws a ceremony for it, but you feel it in the way people address you, in the way the room adjusts when you walk in the way nobody, not once, asks how you're actually doing. Level 5, the inner system. As you approach adulthood, you're gradually exposed to how influence actually operates, not through dramatic revelations. No one sits you down and drops some big, here's how the whole thing works speech. That's not how it goes. Instead, it's all about observation, picking up on what's not being said, reading the room in a way most people never had to learn because nobody was running their life like a classified operation. You notice networks, state-linked corporations with names that mean nothing to civilians, but open every door imaginable. Long-standing business relationships that exist in no public record, but somehow shape major decisions. Individuals who are never introduced formally. No handshake, no title, but are always present, always in the peripheral, always plugged in. Nothing is explained in full. That's not how this world operates. You don't get a full briefing, you get exposure. You get access. The rest you figure out. But patterns emerge, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. Loyalty matters more than credentials. You can be the most qualified person in any room, sharp, educated, dialed in, but if you're not locked in loyalty-wise, you're not getting anywhere near the inner circle. Access matters more than titles. A title on paper means nothing here. But access? Access is the real currency. Decisions are rarely simple and almost never public in their real form. What you see in the news, what gets announced in official channels, that's the version that was cleared for release. The actual decision happens somewhere else between people whose names aren't on any press release. You begin to understand that power isn't just held, it's maintained through systems most people never see and would probably lose sleep over if they did. Level 6, the illusion of normal life. Eventually, you leave to study, possibly abroad, possibly under a low-profile arrangement where your name is managed, your footprint is minimal, and the people around you are still, in some quiet way, keeping tabs. For the first time, you are surrounded by people who don't immediately recognize you. Regular students, people with their own lives, their own drama, their own goals that have nothing to do with your father's world. And for a while, genuinely for a while, it feels normal, like actually normal. You can grab a coffee without it being a security operation. You can walk into a room and just be a person. No wait, no politics, no loaded pauses. It's low-key intoxicating. You try to build relationships without context, to just be someone people vibe with, not someone people are careful around. And some of it works, but because you're smart, you're interesting, you know how to hold a conversation, but something always sits just below the surface. The problem isn't exposure, it's disclosure. How much do you say? When someone asks where you're from, what your parents do, why you're so guarded about certain things, what do you actually say? You can't just overshare. That's not an option that exists for you. What do you hide? And how long can you keep hiding it before it starts to feel like you're just straight up lying to people who actually trust you? What happens if they find out? Not from you, but from a search, a photo, a connection someone makes 3 degrees down the line. Every connection carries risk. Not always physical, but reputational, political, irreversible. One wrong friendship, one careless night, one person who decides the story is worth telling, and suddenly your entire carefully maintained low profile is out the window. So you learn to keep things surface level, not because you want to, because it's safer. And you tell yourself, that's fine. You tell yourself, it's just temporary. But the longer it goes, the more you realize this might just be your permanent setting. Level 7, controlled freedom. At some point, your level of security changes, not removed, but adjusted. Less visible, more distant. The detail that used to be right on top of you pulls back a few steps. You're given room to breathe. You are given space, but it doesn't feel like freedom. Not the real kind, not the kind other people talk about when they say they feel free. Spontaneous, unscripted, genuinely unbothered. Because freedom requires something you were never trained for. Uncertainty without structure. Your whole life has had structure. Even the hard parts, even the uncomfortable parts, they all existed within a framework. There was always someone coordinating, someone monitoring, someone whose job it was to make sure you were okay and in the right place. For the first time, there are moments with no one watching, no one reporting, no one coordinating your movement. And instead of relief, there's silence, the uncomfortable kind, the kind that has no script attached to it. You don't quite know what to do with it. You've never had to figure out what you actually want when no one's watching, because someone was always watching. Now the absence of that is somehow louder than all the noise that came before it. Level 8, the curated life. By your early 20s, your public image is carefully constructed. Appearances, events, controlled media moments that are put together with the kind of precision that most people reserve for major productions. Everything looks polished, independent, successful, composed, like you figured yourself out and are out here thriving on your own terms. And in many ways, it is true. You are capable. You are sharp. You've built real skills, formed real thoughts, done real things, but it's also incomplete. Because the version of you that people see is only the version that can be shown. The version that passed through every filter, every approval, every quiet evaluation of whether this particular image fits the broader narrative. The rest. Your upbringing, your constraints, the parts of your reality that no headline has ever touched, remains unspoken, not hidden, just never acknowledged. And there's a difference between hiding something and simply never being given the space to say it out loud. You live in that difference every single day. Final level, the identity you didn't choose. Every day, you move through environments where your name carries weight before you even speak, before you introduce yourself, before you shake a hand, Opportunities appear faster. Doors swing open that other people have to knock on for years. Expectations arrive heavier. Standards are different. Stakes are higher. And the margin for anything going sideways, razor thin. You can build something of your own. And maybe you do. Maybe you work hard, stay focused, grind in ways people don't see, and create something genuinely yours. But it will never exist in isolation from where you came from. That's just facts. The name, the access, the context. It's all woven into the fabric of everything you touch, whether you invited it or not. That's the part no one explains to you when you're young and still figuring out who you are. You don't just inherit access, you inherit context. And context shapes how people see you before you've done a single thing. It shapes how they trust you or don't, how they talk about you, what they expect, what they're waiting for you to become or fail at, no matter how far you step outside of it, how far you travel, how low you keep your profile, how genuinely you try to just be a person moving through the world on your own terms. It never fully lets you go. That's not a tragedy, but it's not nothing either. It's just your life, the one you didn't choose, the one that chose you.